Hello and welcome to Metaphysical Life Support. My name is Naomi Eklund. I'm your host. Today we are continuing our conversation with Graciela Teofield. She is a Reiki master and a vibrational sound therapist. She's a certified practitioner. She's also an amazing woman with a beautiful story about coming to understand her spirituality. So Graciela, your family is on your mother's side Nicaraguan. On your father's side, please tell me exactly how to say that.
He's African American, but he's a French patois speaking.
Thank you so much. I wanted to make sure that was said correctly. And they ended up in Portland, Oregon, of all places. So tell us a little bit about that journey and discovering the power that comes from both sides of that family.
Oh, this is a fun story. Honestly, I don't know how, other than supernatural, that these two human beings could ever find each other on the planet. My mother's from a little tiny town in Nicaragua. It's on the Atlantic coast. It's called Bluefields. And Bluefields, if you look at the map, you'll see a little bit of a bite right in the middle of the country on the Atlantic side. And that's Bluefields. That's where the lagoon comes in. That's where fresh water, a freshwater river, and the salty water of the ocean meet right there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. My father was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and a son of, there were 11 of those guys. My grandmother and my grandfather out of Ringo, Louisiana.
Had 11 kids?
11 kids. Beautiful people. Oh my gosh. Just gorgeous to look at, but even more gorgeous to sit in their presence. All of them were wise and strong and opinionated and just quite capable. All of them.
Now, do you think that was more about the family or more about the entire culture that they were in?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Culturally, I
I
don't think most of us know much about either one of the cultures that are your background.
All right. Culturally, my father's era was Jim Crow. A lot of racism and segregation was just the norm. It was absolutely the norm. My father's early years, age 16, I think he didn't tell the truth, and he went into the military and fought in the Korean War as a 16-year-old. So all of that was going on. To me, listening to the stories of my father, bringing your most excellent self was the way to raise your family, raise your community to the next level of excellence. It was the way that they were going to get out of that racist, horrible season, was to be as most excellent as they could. So education was imperative. Having a profession was honorable, whether you were in medicine or nursing or you owned your own business. They were all about it.
Which is a side that popular culture doesn't often show us, especially going back to your father's era, because your father was probably born, in the 1920s?
Yeah. 22, 20.
That is not an image that we have portrayed in popular culture. So that's why I asked you to give us a little bit more insight. As a matter of fact, if I can ever get a documentary shot, your family is somebody I want to shoot a documentary on because of the richness and I think the truth that so many of the things that are shown in culture are not the reality of the situation.
No,
when I say culture, I should say media.
Yeah, I agree. They owned their own land. They grew the majority of their own food. Um, they were self-sufficient and high-functioning, excellent, powerful people. Um, and there was not a one of them that had issues with working hard or raising a family and keeping a family together. They're all about it.
I love the way that your shoulders get a little squarer and your heart gets a little bit bigger when you
Yes,
talk about them.
yes. I love their history. I love both my mom and dad's history. My mom was a domestic. She worked in the lumber mines down in Bonanza, Nicaragua. And she ended up working for this lumber millionaire that when they were through there, and that's a big old story down, US people going down, taking up the prime land and resources of the people of third world countries and then leaving. And we could go into that another time. But
Yes.
when they came back, um, they asked my mother if she would like to come with them to work for them here in the United States. And she agreed, knowing that she'd be sending money home for her mother to take care of her three children, my siblings. And so when she came to the United States, she ended up in Oregon and trying to Willamina, Oregon, which is a lumber area. And there's nobody that looks like my mother. My mother had beautiful chocolate brown skin and coal black hair, long down to her waist, and she's taking care of this white family in Willamina, Oregon, of all places. And
Well, and for the viewers that don't know much about racial history in Oregon,
hmm,
it's the ideals projected in Portlandia are newfound.
very true.
It was a place where there was a friend of mine who he's probably 10 years younger than me, so he'd be in his 40s now. He grew up around a place called Grants Pass,
Oh dear.
and he actually remembers the signs in the windows telling African American people they could not be out after dark.
The sundown
And there were
rules.
some KKK headquarters here, and land laws did not allow African American or Black people to. So it's a big deal when you hear this story and you understand that it wasn't even like the Eastern cities. I mean, I'm from Chicago, and in Chicago, there were Black neighborhoods and Black homeowners and Black professionals. That was more normalized. When I first moved to Oregon and I lived in Southern Oregon, I don't think there were 100 African American people living in Southern Oregon. So
No,
the fact that you have these two people who culturally don't look acceptable and they have this amazing story. I needed to give people a little backstory there because I think a lot of people see Portlandia and think Oregon's all open-minded.
oh my gosh, no, absolutely not. Actually, the history of Oregon is when people started migrating to the West and they were bringing their homes and their property, which were slaves, cattle, horses, wagons. When they got to the border of Oregon, the history of Oregon says you can go north to Washington if you have blacks with you, or you can go south to California, but you cannot bring them inside the border. Um, there were a few people that pushed that, but it didn't turn out so well. So the history of Oregon is unfortunately has that history, and there's some places here in Oregon that still maintain some of that flavor, though I'm hoping that that continues to change and the next generation are not so entrenched in the old ways, but it's very historical.
It is, and thank you. I didn't mean to get away from your parents' story, which is so beautiful. I think it is important that we acknowledge that it wasn't like they met in a place like a city in the East where
No.
there was some acceptance or there was some ease. They met in a desert that was all white. And they were, and their story is even made that much more incredible by the landscape in which they became who they were, stayed strong, and grew such an amazing family. So please
Yes.
go back to your mom and dad. I want to see you smile again.
Okay. Well, the lady of the house recognized that my mom was very lonely and that she had to stay really close to the family in order to stay safe. And she says, maybe you should go to Portland, because Portland had a hub of people from all over the world that came to work in the shipyards. And the community known back then was Vanport. If you know anything about Vanport, Vanport was destroyed by a flood where the dam broke, the water came down, flooded out an entire city region of Portland known as Vanport. And it was predominantly people of color working in the shipyards. My dad had come to Portland to work in the shipyards. He had, after military, he was a merchant marine. He did a plethora of other things, but working in the shipyard, that was one of the things that he did do. So my mom happened to come down to Portland to go to church. And this is where some of my first non-DNA aunties showed up. Her best friends that she made when she came to Portland remained her friends lifelong. Alma Tuggle, Hattie Parr, Louise Cambrick. These were all people that she met when she came to Portland, and she's like, oh, these were women of color, these were church women that she could identify with. And it just so happened that there was going to be a church dance. And my mother showed up. Now, mind you, my mother is just as gorgeous of a woman you can imagine. If you could just imagine. She was curvy. She was beautiful chocolate brown with coal black hair that was, long. And if I remember a picture that I saw of her back in the day, she had exquisitely beautiful red lipstick all the time, anytime she was out. Just, it was that era, that high fashion time where women, when they went out, they really put it on. And my dad happened to be there at this dance that he showed up with someone else that he knew.
And your dad didn't have a chance, did he?
Didn't have a chance. Didn't have a chance. We laugh at this story because dad came with someone else, but he left with mother. And the rest is history. Thank you very much. And from that union, my mother and all that she was, and my father and all that he was, knowing how significant family was, they began to put the family back together, one person at a time. My sister that was from Shreveport, Louisiana, she came up. My brothers and sisters that were down in Nicaragua and my grandmother, they came up. They couldn't do it all at one time, but one person at a time. One person at a time. They networked and put this family back together. And we are still here in the Portland metro area after all these years of their work. My mom is still alive, 96, soon to be 97, still here in the Portland area. My father passed many years ago, but who he was and how he was and what he thought about family, it's still with us.
I love so many things about the love and the passion and the way you speak about your family. You know, when you talk about this sense of community, could you tell me the rice story?
Oh, my sister, my eldest sister, Vilma. We know that we've fallen hard times sometimes, all of us, and we're all in this together. This family is all in this together, and it's funny because we say that if I have a pot of beans and all I have is rice and beans, you come. You don't have no, come. If there are 30 people in the room and 30 beans in the pot, everybody will have a bean. Nobody goes without. And that's just how it is. We lean in, we lean back. Sometimes we hand me overs and we hand me backs. Um, we just make it work. We make sure that everybody stays well, stays healthy. It's a family thing.
I love that sense of the individual within the community and the knowing of the strength of the community, the family community. You also made a comment about people's responsibility to ask for help.
Oh, absolutely.
Could you speak a little more? Because not a lot of us were brought up with that.
We do have a responsibility. One of my sayings is, a closed mouth don't get fed. If you don't say that you're struggling or you're hurting, then out of respect, we're respecting, even though we're a family, we're respecting your privacy and your journey. If you need help, you have a responsibility to say something. And then once it's said, we come together as a family. Oh, well, they need this. Well, I have this. I don't have that. Do you have that? So as a family, we start piecing together what it is we do have and how it is we can help. But if you never say anything, that's on you. And trust me, when we find out that you were struggling and suffering in silence, we're going to get on your head real good and fix that. So the next time it doesn't come around that way.
Well, if you really are all in it together, which we really are all in life together, I heard somebody say we might be in different boats sometimes, but we're really all in the same storm, right?
Yeah.
And somebody doesn't tell you that they need help, then everybody just has more work to do when the problem does come to resolve.
Well, it turns out that way. It turns out that way. If we can get a jump start on a problem, then we might be able to head that off.
Oh, it is a delight. I am going to end this segment and come back. I could talk to you all afternoon, but I do have some other things I'd like to talk with you about if you're open to staying with us.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're such a delight. Thank you. My name is Naomi Eklund, and we have been with Graciela Teofield. This is Metaphysical Life Support. Thank you so much for being here. Remember to like, share, and subscribe so that we can continue to bring you beautiful stories that uplift and support you on your path. Thank you.